My name is Violet Harrison, 56 years old, and I never thought I'd be called a nobody by my own daughter. After 20 years of raising Amanda, sacrificing everything I had, I found myself relegated to the back row at her wedding, while my ex-wife's new husband sat in the place of honour. "You don't fit with the big men," she told me when I questioned the seating chart, so I calmly left. What happened next changed everything about our relationship. Let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button before I continue this heartbreaking story. I never imagined that at 56 years old, I would have to reintroduce myself to the world without the one title I cherished most: devoted mother to Amanda. Before I tell you how everything fell apart at her wedding, let me take you back to where our story began. 25 years ago, I married Margaret Sullivan, a bright-eyed accountant with dreams as big as the Montana sky. We built a beautiful life together in our modest 3-bedroom home in Cedar Falls. When Amanda came along 3 years later, I thought our family was complete. She was this tiny bundle with her mother's golden hair and my green eyes, and from the moment I held her, I knew I would do anything for her. Those early years were filled with bedtime stories, backyard picnics, and weekend trips to the local lake. I worked as a high school English teacher while Margaret climbed the corporate ladder at her accounting firm. We weren't wealthy by any means, but we were happy. Amanda was our world. I remember teaching her to ride a bike in our driveway, bandaging her scraped knees, and staying up all night when she had the flu. When Amanda was 8, the cracks in our marriage began to show. Margaret started working longer hours, and we grew apart. The arguments became more frequent, mostly about money. Margaret wanted a bigger house in a more prestigious neighbourhood private school for Amanda Country Club memberships, things we simply couldn't afford on our combined salaries. "You lack ambition, Violet," she would say. "Don't you want more for Amanda?" Of course I did, but I believed happiness came from love and stability, not material possessions. The divorce was finalised when Amanda was 10. Margaret got primary custody, but I remained active in Amanda's life, never missing a school event or birthday. I moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment 15 minutes away and had Amanda every other weekend and Wednesday evenings. I took on extra tutoring jobs to make ends meet and to ensure I could give Amanda some of the extras she wanted. I sold my grandmother's antique jewellery to help pay for her first summer camp. While I couldn't provide the luxuries Margaret could, I made sure every moment with Amanda was meaningful. We baked cookies, worked on school projects, and talked about books and dreams and life. 3 years after our divorce, Margaret met Thomas Reynolds, CEO of a regional banking chain. He was everything I wasn't: wealthy, powerful, connected. They married in a lavish ceremony at the Grand Hotel downtown. Thomas moved them into his 5-bedroom mansion in Lakeside Heights, the most exclusive neighborhood in our city. Suddenly, Amanda had her own suite with a walk-in closet, a private bathroom, and a view of the lake. At first, I tried to maintain a cordial relationship with Thomas for Amanda's sake. He seemed decent enough, and Amanda appeared happy with the new arrangement. I told myself that as long as she was happy, I could accept the changes. "Mum says Thomas is going to take me to Paris for spring break," 13-year-old Amanda told me during one of our weekends together. Her eyes sparkled with excitement. "He says every young lady should see Paris." "That sounds wonderful, sweetheart," I said, swallowing my envy and disappointment that I couldn't offer her such extravagant experiences. As Amanda entered high school, I noticed a shift in her behaviour. The sweet, thoughtful girl, who once cherished our simple traditions, now seemed perpetually dissatisfied. She began comparing our modest activities unfavourably to the glamorous outings with Thomas and Margaret. "Thomas took me shopping at Nordstrom and let me buy whatever I wanted," she would say, looking around my small apartment with poorly disguised disdain. When Amanda turned 16, Thomas bought her a brand new BMW convertible. I had been saving for 2 years to buy her a reliable used Honda. My gift seemed pathetic in comparison, and for the first time I saw genuine disappointment in her eyes when she opened my carefully wrapped package containing the keys to the Honda and a heartfelt letter. "Thanks, Mum," she said, flatly, slipping the keys into her pocket without reading the letter. Thomas and Margaret's influence grew stronger as Amanda moved through high school. She joined the country club's junior tennis program, attended debutante balls, and vacationed in the Hamptons with her other family, as she began to call them. I tried to compensate by focusing on emotional support. I attended every tennis match, helped with college applications, and continued to make time for our Wednesday dinners, even when Amanda began cancelling at the last minute with increasing frequency. Margaret never missed an opportunity to remind me of my inadequacies. "Amanda needs to focus on building the right connections for college," she would say when I called to reschedule a cancelled visit. "Thomas is introducing her to the Dean of Admissions at Princeton next weekend." By the time Amanda left for college, I felt like I was losing her. The gap between our worlds had grown too wide, and I didn't know how to bridge it anymore. 3 years ago, Amanda graduated from Princeton with honours. I sat in the audience bursting with pride watching my beautiful daughter accept her diploma. Though I had contributed to her education with every spare penny I had, Thomas and Margaret had covered the majority of her tuition. At the graduation dinner, which Thomas hosted at an exclusive restaurant, I felt like an outsider looking in on a family that no longer included me. 6 months after graduation, Amanda called with exciting news. She was engaged to Jackson Hayes, the son of a prominent family in Boston's social circle. She had met him during a summer internship arranged by Thomas. "He proposed at the top of the Eiffel Tower, Mum," she gushed over the phone. "The ring is 5 carats. Wait until you see it." My heart swelled with happiness for her, despite the pang of sadness that I hadn't met the man who would become my son-in-law. "I can't wait to meet him, sweetheart. When can we all get together?" "Soon," she promised. "We're flying back from Paris next week, and then we'll be in New York for some meetings with wedding planners. Thomas knows the best in the business." The engagement announcement appeared in the New York Times before I had a chance to meet Jackson. When I finally did at a dinner orchestrated by Margaret and Thomas, he seemed pleasant enough. Handsome, well-educated, and clearly from a privileged background. He called me Mrs. Harrison, despite my invitation to use my first name, and spent most of the evening discussing investment strategies with Thomas. As wedding plans began to take shape, it became clear that this would be no ordinary celebration. Thomas had offered to fund an extravagant affair at the Westfield Country Club with over 300 guests, a 10-piece orchestra, and flowers flown in from Holland. "I'd like to contribute something," I told Amanda during one of our increasingly rare phone conversations. "I've been saving and I can help with the dress or perhaps the flowers." There was a pause on the line. "That's sweet, Mum, but Thomas has it all covered. The dress alone is $30,000 from a designer in Milan. But maybe you could help with, the welcome baskets for out-of-town guests." The sum I had saved, $15,000, nearly all my emergency fund, wouldn't even cover the cost of my daughter's wedding dress. Still, I wanted to be involved. Of course I'd love to help with the welcome baskets. Even that small contribution was eventually sidelined. Margaret called a week later to inform me that she had hired an event company to handle all the minor details, like welcome baskets. "We wouldn't want anything to look homemade," she said with faux concern in her voice. As the months passed, I found myself increasingly excluded from the wedding preparations. I wasn't invited to the cake, tasting the menu selection, or the final dress fitting. I would learn about these events after they happened through Amanda's social media posts or casual mentions in our brief conversations. "Oh, we decided on the buttercream cake with gold leaf accents," Amanda would say. "Thomas's pastry chef friend from New York designed it." When I asked about the rehearsal dinner, Amanda hesitated before responding. "It's just going to be a small affair for the wedding party and the Hayes family, very intimate." It wasn't until 3 weeks before the wedding that I realized I hadn't received an invitation to the rehearsal dinner. When I called Amanda to ask about it, she sounded distracted. "Oh, didn't I tell you it's at the Hayes family estate on Thursday night, but it's really just immediate family and the bridal party." "I see," I said, my voice catching. "And I'm not considered immediate family. Mum, don't start." Amanda sighed. "Thomas and the Hayes are handling all the arrangements. They have a certain way of doing things in their circle." Their circle. A circle that apparently didn't include me. As the wedding drew closer, the pre-wedding events began in earnest. I learned about Amanda's bridal shower through a Facebook post, a lavish affair at the Four Seasons that Margaret had organised. When I called to ask why I hadn't been invited, Margaret claimed the invitation must have been lost in the mail. She extended a last-minute invitation that felt more like an afterthought than a genuine desire to include me. I spent hours selecting the perfect gift, a handcrafted photo album filled with pictures of Amanda growing up along with a silver locket that had belonged to my grandmother. It represented our history, our bond, all the moments we had shared together. At the shower, elegantly dressed women sipped champagne and watched as Amanda opened gift after gift of crystal china and silver from stores I could never afford to shop at. When she opened my gift, there was a moment of awkward silence. "How thoughtful," Margaret said with a tight smile, quickly passing the album to a bridesmaid who set it aside. Amanda barely glanced at it before moving on to the next package. A set of Hermes table linens from one of Thomas's business associates. Later that afternoon, I overheard Margaret and her sister talking in hushed tones by the dessert table. "I don't know why Violet insists on these homemade gifts," Margaret said. "It just makes everyone uncomfortable." I slipped away to the bathroom, fighting back tears. The locket and album had cost me 3 months of savings, but their sentimental value was what mattered to me. I had hoped Amanda would appreciate the history and love they represented. A week before the wedding, I received a call from Amanda. "Mum, I wanted to let you know that Thomas will be walking me down the aisle," she said without preamble. My heart felt like it stopped. "But I thought, traditionally that would be my role, wouldn't it? As your mother, Thomas has done so much for me, Mum. He's paying for the entire wedding and the Hayes family is very traditional. They expect the father figure to give the bride away. I'm your mother, Amanda. I raised you. I was there for every milestone." "Yes, but Thomas has been a real parent to me for the past 12 years, she replied, her voice hardening. "He's provided opportunities you never could. Besides, this is what I want." I tried to swallow the lump in my throat. "I see. Is there something else I can do in the ceremony? Maybe a reading or—" "The ceremony program is already finalized and at the printer," she said quickly. "But you'll be seated in the family section, of course." After we hung up, I pulled out the wedding invitation and studied it. For the first time, I noticed that it was from Mr. and Mrs. Thomas Reynolds, with no mention of me as the mother of the bride. It was as if I had been erased from my daughter's life. 2 days before the wedding, I received a call from the wedding planner, a brisk woman named Stephanie with a British accent. "Mrs. Harrison, I'm calling to confirm your attendance at the wedding on Saturday." "Yes, of course I'll be there," I replied. "Excellent. And will you be bringing a +1? "No, just me." "Very well. I wanted to inform you that you'll be seated in row 7, section B during the ceremony." I frowned. "Section B, isn't that—" "Not the family section." There was a pause. "The immediate family will be in the front rows of section A. Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds, the groom's parents and grandparents." "But I'm the mother of the bride," I said, my voice rising slightly. "Shouldn't I be in the front row as well? I'm just following the seating chart approved by the bride and her parents." Stephanie replied stiffly. "If you have concerns, you should speak with them directly." When I called Amanda, she sounded annoyed. "Mum, the seating chart took forever to figure out. We can't change it now." "But why am I not seated with the family? I'm your mother." "Look, Thomas and Margaret are hosting the wedding. They're in the front row with Jackson's parents. It would be weird to have you there too. Weird to have the woman who gave birth to you in the front row of your wedding, I asked, hurt, evident in my voice. Mum, please don't make this difficult. Thomas is covering all the expenses. He's the sponsor of the wedding. He and his business associates, the big men, as Jackson's father calls them, need to be showcased appropriately. You don't fit into that picture. Her words struck me like a physical blow. I didn't fit into the picture of my own daughter's wedding. Later that evening, I received a text from Margaret. Violet, please know your place for once. This wedding is about Amanda's future, not your feelings. Don't embarrass her by making a scene. Despite the humiliation, I was determined to be there for my daughter on her wedding day. I told myself I could endure anything for Amanda's happiness. The morning of Amanda's wedding dawned bright and clear. I spent extra time getting ready, selecting a pale blue dress I had splurged on for the occasion. I arrived at the church an hour early, hoping for a few quiet moments with Amanda before the ceremony. The church had been transformed into something from a fairy tale. White roses and orchids cascaded from every surface. Crystal chandeliers had been brought in specially, and a white carpet lined the aisle. A small army of coordinators with headsets bustled about, directing early arrivals to their places. When I approached the bridal suite, a young woman with a clipboard stopped me. "I'm sorry, this area is restricted to the bridal party." "I'm Amanda Harrison's mother," I explained. "I'd like to see her before the ceremony." She checked her list with a frown. "I don't have you on the pre-ceremony schedule. Let me check with Stephanie." After a hushed conversation with the head coordinator, she returned. "Mrs. Harrison, the bride is in final preparations. She asked not to be disturbed except by the immediate wedding party." Immediate wedding party. Once again, I was excluded. "Could you at least tell her I'm here, that I'd like to wish her well before the ceremony?" With obvious reluctance, the assistant disappeared into the bridal suite. A few minutes later, Amanda emerged already dressed in her stunning gown of silk and lace. She looked breathtakingly beautiful and completely unfamiliar, like a stranger wearing my daughter's face. "Mum, what are you doing back here?" she hissed. "The guests are supposed to be in the sanctuary." "I just wanted to see you before the ceremony," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "To tell you how beautiful you look and how proud I am." She glanced nervously over her shoulder. "Thomas and Margaret are taking photos with the photographer right now. The Hayes family will be joining us in 5 minutes. "Amanda," I said, reaching for her hand. "I don't understand what's happening. Why am I being pushed aside on your wedding day? Why am I seated in the back rows, not included in photos, not even listed in the program?" Her expression hardened. "Mum, this wedding is about making the right impression. The Hayes family is very influential. Thomas has business relationships to maintain. Everyone here is somebody important. And I'm not somebody important," I whispered, my heart breaking. Amanda looked at me, and for a moment I saw something like regret in her eyes. Then it vanished, replaced by cool detachment. "In this world, no mum, you're a nobody. You teach high school English in a public school. You live in an apartment. You drive a 10-year-old car." I stared at my daughter, unable to believe the words coming out of her mouth. "Thomas is the one who made this wedding possible," she continued. "He's the sponsor. He fits in with the big men here, the business leaders, the political connections that Jackson's family values. You just don't fit that image." My hands trembled as I straightened my back. "I see. And does that matter more to you than the fact that I'm your mother, that I raised you, loved you, supported you through everything?" "Don't be dramatic, Mum," she sighed. Of course, I appreciate what you did when I was growing up, but this is about my future now. Please just go to your assigned seat and don't make a scene. As I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of Margaret in a designer gown, arm in arm with Thomas, both beaming as a photographer captured them posing with Amanda. A perfect family portrait, one that didn't include me. In a daze, I made my way to the sanctuary. An usher directed me to row 7, section B, far from the front, where the family should be seated. As I took my place, I noticed Thomas's elderly aunt had better seating than I did. Several business associates I had never met were positioned prominently near the front. I sat alone watching as the church filled with beautifully dressed strangers. No one spoke to me or acknowledged my presence. When Margaret's sister spotted me, she quickly averted her eyes and moved to the other side of the church. The final insult came when I opened the wedding program. There was a special thanks to Thomas and Margaret Reynolds for their generous support and guidance, followed by acknowledgements of the groom's parents and various dignitaries in attendance. My name appeared nowhere in the glossy pages, not in the list of special thanks, not in the family acknowledgements, not even in the small print at the end. It was as if I didn't exist, as if I had never been Amanda's mother at all. As the music began and guests settled into their seats, I watched Thomas take his place of honour in the front row, next to the empty seat reserved for Margaret after she finished escorting Amanda down the aisle. They would present a united front, the proud parents giving their daughter away, while I sat among strangers erased from the narrative of Amanda's life. In that moment, something broke inside me, not just my heart, but my willingness to accept such treatment. I had spent years making excuses for Amanda's growing coldness for her dismissal of our relationship, in favour of the wealth and status Thomas and Margaret offered. I had told myself it was just a phase, that she still loved me, even if she was seduced by the privileges of her new life. But sitting there intentionally hidden away like an embarrassing family secret, I finally saw the truth. This was not love. This was not respect, and I deserved better, even from my own daughter. Quietly, without drawing attention to myself, I gathered my purse and slipped out of the pew. No one noticed as I walked up the side aisle and out the church doors. No one called after me or asked where I was going. In the parking lot, I took one last look at the beautiful church where my daughter was about to marry, without her real mother present. Then I got into my car and drove away, tears streaming down my face, but a strange sense of dignity settling into my bones. I would not stay where I was unwanted. I would not beg for scraps of affection from a daughter who called me a nobody. For the first time in 20 years, I chose to respect myself more than I feared losing Amanda. The drive home passed in a blur of tears and disbelief. My phone rang several times, likely the wedding coordinator wondering where I'd gone, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. What would I say? That I'd been demoted from mother of the bride to unwelcome guest, that my own daughter had called me a nobody. At home, I kicked off my heels and collapsed onto my sofa, still wearing my carefully chosen dress. The apartment felt unnaturally quiet, a fitting backdrop to the hollow ache in my chest. For hours I sat motionless, replaying years of interactions with Amanda, searching for the moment when I had lost her, truly lost her, to the allure of wealth and status. Had it been when Thomas first entered our lives with his grand gestures and expensive gifts, or earlier when the divorce left Amanda vulnerable to Margaret's constant messaging that success meant money, influence, and social standing, or was it my fault for not somehow finding a way to compete with the lifestyle Thomas offered? As evening fell, my phone began to light up with texts and calls, first from the wedding planner, then from Margaret's sister, and finally from Margaret herself. "Where the hell are you?" her text read. "Amanda noticed you were gone during the reception line. She's upset that you would ruin her day like this." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say that wouldn't be twisted or dismissed. Later that night, Amanda called. When I didn't pick up, she left a scathing voicemail. "I can't believe you would humiliate me like this. People were asking where you were. Do you have any idea how that made me look? After everything Thomas and Margaret have done for this wedding, for you to just disappear. I thought you were better than this, Mum. I guess I was wrong. Not a word about how she had humiliated me, not a hint of understanding about why I might have felt unwelcome enough to leave. The next day, I called in sick to work and spent the morning in bed, exhausted from a night of fitful sleep and painful reflection. By afternoon, I had made a decision. I would not continue to accept treatment that diminished my worth as a person and as a mother. Something needed to change. I called my oldest friend Rachel, who had witnessed my dedication to Amanda throughout the years. I don't recognize my own daughter anymore, I confessed, my voice breaking. She called me a nobody, Rachel, after everything I've sacrificed for her. Oh, Violet, Rachel sighed. I've watched you pour your heart and soul into raising that girl. You worked 3 jobs to put her through that fancy summer program when she was 16. You sold your car to help with her first semester at Princeton. If that makes you a nobody, then the world has truly gone mad. Her validation unlocked something in me, a realization that I wasn't crazy for feeling betrayed and hurt. That my contributions as a mother, while not financial in nature, had been significant and worthy of respect. Over the next few days, I spoke with other friends who reminded me of all I had done for Amanda. My colleague Michael recounted how I had graded papers in the hospital when Amanda had her appendix removed, unwilling to leave her side even for work. My neighbour Susan recalled the elaborate themed birthday parties I had created on a shoestring budget, staying up all night to hand-paint decorations. You were the definition of a devoted mother, Susan said firmly. If Amanda can't see that the problem isn't with you. A week after the wedding, I received a large envelope containing professional photos of the ceremony and reception. There was no note, just a selection of glossy images showing Amanda radiant in her gown, Thomas proudly walking her down the aisle, Margaret wiping away tears in the front row, happy family portraits featuring the Reynolds and Hayes families. Nowhere in these carefully curated images was there any acknowledgement that I existed, let alone that I was Amanda's mother. That night, I wrote Amanda a letter expressing my hurt and disappointment, but also my enduring love. I explained that I could no longer accept being treated as an afterthought in her life, that respect was a necessary component of any healthy relationship, even between mother and daughter. I told her I would always be her mother, but that I needed time and space to heal from the wedding day wounds. I never sent the letter. Before I could decide whether to mail it, Amanda appeared at my door, her face flushed with anger. 3 days after the wedding, I was grading papers at my kitchen table when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Amanda standing there, still glowing from her Caribbean honeymoon, but with fire in her eyes. "What were you thinking?" she demanded, brushing past me into the apartment. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing it was to have guests asking where my mother was? Jackson's grandmother thought you must have been ill." I closed the door slowly, gathering my strength. "Hello to you too, Amanda. Congratulations on your wedding. Don't be passive-aggressive," she snapped. "I want an explanation. Why did you leave without telling anyone?" "I think you know why," I said quietly, meeting her gaze. "Because you couldn't handle not being the center of attention, because you're jealous that Thomas could give me a beautiful wedding and you couldn't." Her accusation stung, but I refused to be baited into an emotional reaction. "No, Amanda. I left because it was made abundantly clear that I wasn't welcome as your mother. I was seated in the back row, excluded from family photos, and not even mentioned in the program. You yourself told me I was a nobody who didn't fit with the big men at your wedding." "I never said you were a nobody," she protested, though her eyes flickered away from mine. "You did. Right outside the bridal suite. Your exact words." Amanda paced the small living room, her designer heels clicking on my worn hardwood floors. "Fine, maybe I said something like that, but you're taking it completely out of context. I was stressed. It was my wedding day." "And that makes it acceptable to treat your mother like an unwanted guest." "You're being so dramatic about this. The seating arrangement was about protocol. Thomas paid for everything. The Hayes family has certain expectations. It wasn't personal. It felt very personal when I saw Thomas's distant cousins seated ahead of me, when I realized I wasn't included in any of the family events, when I discovered my name wasn't anywhere in the program. That was an oversight, she said dismissively. An oversight, I repeated. Amanda, I gave birth to you. I raised you for 20 years. I was there for every skinned knee, every school play, every heartbreak. How does that get overlooked? You know what? I don't need this guilt trip right now. I just got married. I should be celebrating, not defending myself to you. I'm not asking for a defense. I'm asking for recognition of the hurt you've caused, for some understanding of why I felt I needed to leave. Amanda's expression hardened. What I understand is that you couldn't put aside your ego for one day to celebrate my happiness, that you had to make my wedding about your feelings. Is that what Margaret told you? I asked, suddenly understanding that I'm self-centered for expecting to be treated with basic dignity as your mother. Don't bring Margaret into this. This is between you and me. Is it because it seems like Margaret and Thomas have been driving a wedge between us for years and you've let them? Amanda's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then looked back at me with impatience. I don't have time for this right now. Jackson and I are having dinner with the Reynolds. I came here expecting an apology, not more drama. An apology, I was incredulous. For what exactly? For refusing to sit quietly while being erased from your life. For embarrassing me on my wedding day, she exclaimed. For walking out without a word. Do you know Thomas had to smooth things over with the Hayes family? He told them you had a medical emergency. How considerate of him, I said dryly. And here I thought the truth, that the bride's mother was deliberately pushed aside, might have been more embarrassing. Amanda grabbed her purse. I can see this conversation is going nowhere. When you're ready to act like an adult and apologize, you know where to find me. As she reached for the door, I found myself saying the words I had been holding back for years. Amanda, I love you. I have always loved you and supported you even when it broke my heart to see you pull away from me, but I will not apologize for refusing to be treated like a stranger at your wedding. I deserve better than that, even from you. She paused her hand on the doorknob. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of the daughter I remembered, thoughtful kind, aware of others' feelings. Then it vanished. Thomas and Margaret were right about you, she said coldly. You can't be happy for me unless everything is on your terms. The door closed behind her with a decisive click, leaving me alone with the truth of what our relationship had become. Later that evening, I received a text from Margaret. Amanda is devastated by your behavior. Thomas and they have spent the entire evening consoling her. If you had any real love for your daughter, you would apologize and stop this childish drama. An hour later, Thomas called. It was the first time he had ever contacted me directly in all the years he had been married to Margaret. Violet, he said, his voice smooth and controlled, I think it's time we cleared the air. Amanda is deeply hurt by your actions. The Hayes family was understandably confused by your absence. As someone who cares about Amanda's well-being, I'm asking you to make this right. And how would I do that, Thomas? I asked, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. A simple apology would go a long way. Amanda is willing to move past this unfortunate incident if you acknowledge your mistake. My mistake, I repeated. Was my mistake expecting to be treated like the mother of the bride? Or was it leaving rather than accepting the insult of being hidden away like a family embarrassment? There was a pause on the line. I understand you may feel overlooked, but surely you can see that certain protocols needed to be followed. The wedding was a significant social and business event. The seating arrangements reflected the financial and social contributions of the various parties involved. So, because I couldn't contribute $30,000 for a dress, I didn't deserve to be acknowledged as Amanda's mother. That's not what I'm saying, Thomas replied. a hint of frustration creeping into his voice. But appearances matter in our circle. Amanda is starting a new life with Jackson. The Hayes family has expectations. Sometimes traditional family roles need to be adjusted to accommodate the bigger picture. The bigger picture, I said softly. I see it now, Thomas. Thank you for making it so clear. Then you'll speak with Amanda. Yes, I will. When she's ready to hear what I have to say, I'll be here. But I won't be apologizing for valuing myself enough to leave a situation where I was being deliberately humiliated. That's disappointing, Violet. Very disappointing. I had hoped you would be more reasonable. After we hung up, I sat in the growing darkness of my apartment, processing the conversation. For years I had tried to avoid conflict with Thomas and Margaret, believing it was best for Amanda. I had swallowed my pride, accepted their subtle and not so subtle put-downs, and watched as they gradually supplanted me in Amanda's life. But something had shifted inside me. Perhaps it was the cumulative weight of years of disrespect, or perhaps it was simply the realization that I had nothing left to lose. Whatever the reason, I found myself standing firm in my conviction that I deserved better treatment, even if that meant a painful break with my only child. In the days that followed, Margaret orchestrated a campaign of pressure. Her sister called to tell me I was being selfish. Thomas's mother left a voicemail suggesting I consider family therapy to address my jealousy issues. Even my own mother, who lived in Florida and had heard a heavily edited version of events from Amanda, called to ask why I was making trouble. Through it all, I maintained my position. I would not apologize for an offense I hadn't committed. I would not pretend that being erased from my daughter's wedding was acceptable. And I would not continue to participate in a relationship that consistently diminished my worth. It was the hardest stand I had ever taken, but for the first time in years, I felt a flicker of self-respect returning. The weeks following Amanda's wedding were some of the loneliest I had ever experienced. The silence from my daughter echoed through my daily routines, a constant reminder of what I had lost, or perhaps what had been taken from me gradually over the years, culminating in that final insult at the church. I threw myself into my work, volunteering for after-school programs and taking on additional responsibilities at the high school. My students became my focus, their needs and achievements, filling some of the void left by Amanda's absence. When well-meaning colleagues asked about the wedding, I developed a brief, emotionally neutral response. It was a beautiful ceremony, but we're taking some space from each other now. Rachel suggested I join a support group for estranged parents, and though I initially resisted the label estranged, it seemed so final, so severe, I eventually attended a meeting at the community centre. Sitting in a circle with other parents whose adult children had cut contact was both heartbreaking and oddly comforting. I wasn't alone in this pain. My son hasn't spoken to me in 3 years. Shared a silver-haired man named Robert. His wife decided I wasn't sophisticated enough to be included in their social circle. My daughter told me I embarrassed her, said Elena, a warm-eyed kindergarten teacher. Apparently, my accent and immigrant background don't fit with the image she wants to project. Their stories resonated deeply with me. We had all been deemed insufficient or inappropriate in some way, our love and histories discarded for more socially advantageous connections. Through these meetings and sessions with a therapist specializing in family estrangement, I began to understand that Amanda's rejection wasn't entirely about me. It reflected her own insecurities, her desire to belong to a world that valued wealth and status above authenticity and history. You can love your daughter unconditionally while still requiring basic respect, my therapist reminded me. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you've stopped loving her. 2 months after the wedding, I received an invitation to a housewarming party at Amanda and Jackson's new home, a wedding gift from Thomas, according to the society pages. I debated whether to attend, unsure if this was an olive branch or another opportunity for humiliation. After careful consideration, I declined with a brief note. Congratulations on your new home. I'm not ready for a social gathering, but I'm open to meeting privately when you're ready to talk about what happened at the wedding. Amanda didn't respond directly, but Margaret called the next day, her voice tight with controlled anger. Haven't you punished her enough? It's been months, Violet. This grudge holding is getting ridiculous. It's not a grudge, Margaret, I replied calmly. It's a boundary. I won't pretend everything is fine when it isn't. So, what do you want? An engraved apology. A public acknowledgement that you feel slighted. I want Amanda to understand why her actions were hurtful. I want a relationship based on mutual respect, not one where I'm expected to accept whatever scraps of attention she deigns to give me. Margaret's laugh was brittle. Always the dramatist. No wonder Amanda finds it difficult to relate to you. After we hung up, I wondered if Margaret was right. Was I being unreasonable? Dramatic? Was my insistence on acknowledgement and respect preventing a reconciliation with my daughter? That night, I pulled out old photo albums. The real ones, not the digitized versions on social media. Pictures of Amanda as a toddler, her small hand in mine as she took her first steps. Amanda at her 5th birthday party, beaming as she blew out the candles on the homemade cake I had stayed up all night to decorate. Amanda at her middle school graduation, her arms wrapped tightly around my neck as we posed for the camera. There had been love there once, real, uncomplicated love between mother and daughter. A week later, I received an unexpected visitor. Jackson's mother, Caroline Hayes, appeared at my door one afternoon, elegant, in a simple cashmere sweater and pearl earrings. "Mrs. Harrison," she said, extending her hand. "I hope you don't mind my stopping by unannounced. I wanted to speak with you privately." Surprised, I invited her in, hastily clearing books from the sofa to make space for her. "I've wanted to meet you properly," she said, accepting the tea I offered. "The wedding was such a whirlwind, and then with your early departure, we never had the chance to talk." I tensed, preparing for another lecture about my selfishness or the embarrassment I had caused. "I want you to know," Caroline continued, her voice gentle, "that I was disturbed by your absence at the reception. When Thomas explained you had a medical emergency, I accepted it at face value. It wasn't until later, when I overheard Margaret talking to her sister, that I realized the truth. I said nothing, waiting. As a mother myself, I cannot imagine being placed in the back row at my son's wedding, or being excluded from family photographs, or having my name omitted from the program. Her eyes, kind but shrewd, held mine. It was wrong what they did to you. The simple validation from this unexpected source brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you for saying that," I managed. "Jackson is troubled by it too," she added. "He comes from a family that values parenthood. When he realized how you had been treated, he spoke to Amanda about it. I don't think it went well. Amanda believes I ruined her perfect day by leaving," I said. Caroline sipped her tea thoughtfully. "Perhaps, but maybe she also feels guilt she isn't ready to acknowledge. The truth often works its way to the surface given time." Before she left, Caroline placed her card on my coffee table. "I hope we'll have a chance to know each other better, Violet. Whatever happens between you and Amanda, we're family now." Her visit left me feeling strangely hopeful. If Jackson and his mother could see the injustice in how I had been treated, perhaps Amanda would eventually come to the same realization. 3 days later, a small package arrived at my apartment. Inside was the silver locket I had given Amanda at her bridal shower, along with a note in her handwriting. "Found this while unpacking. Thought you might want it back." The return of the family heirloom felt like a final severance, a statement that she wanted no connection to the history we shared. I placed the locket in my jewellery box, alongside other precious mementos of a relationship that seemed increasingly lost to me, but Caroline's words echoed in my mind. The truth often works its way to the surface given time. I had to believe that someday Amanda would remember the mother who had loved her unconditionally, who had built her childhood with creativity and devotion rather than money and social connections. Until then, I would continue building a life of dignity and purpose, with or without my daughter's presence in it. 4 months after Amanda's wedding, I was leaving school after an evening parent-teacher conference when I spotted a familiar figure leaning against my car. Amanda stood in the glow of the parking lot lights, her elegant coat a stark contrast to the utilitarian surroundings of Westridge High School. "Mum," she said as I approached, her voice uncertain. "Amanda," I replied, my heart racing despite my outward calm. "This is a surprise." She shifted uncomfortably. "I was hoping we could talk. Maybe get coffee or something." We ended up at a small diner a few blocks from school, sitting across from each other in a vinyl booth. Amanda looked thinner than at her wedding, with shadows under her eyes that her expensive makeup couldn't quite conceal. "Jackson's mother came to see you," she said, after we had ordered coffee. "She did," I acknowledged. Amanda traced the rim of her cup with one manicured finger. "She's been asking questions about why you're not at family gatherings, making comments about the importance of mothers. Caroline seems like a thoughtful woman. She showed me the wedding photos the other day," Amanda continued. "The professional ones Thomas arranged. She asked where you were in the family portraits." I said nothing, waiting. "And then she showed me her wedding album from 30 years ago. Her mother died when she was young, but they had an empty chair in the front row with her photo and a single rose." Amanda's voice cracked slightly. "She said it was important to honor the people who gave you life, who shaped who you became." "That's a beautiful sentiment." Amanda looked up at me, her eyes swimming with unshed tears. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened, about what I said to you at the church. I remember it clearly." I said, my own voice steady despite the emotions churning inside me. "I called you a nobody," she whispered. "My own mother." "Yes, you did. I don't know why I said that. It's not even true. My professors at Princeton knew who you were because I talked about you all the time, about how you taught me to love reading, how you worked extra jobs to help with my tuition." A tear slipped down her cheek. "Jackson found the photo album you gave me at the shower, the one Margaret made me set aside. He asked why I never showed it to him, all those pictures of my childhood." "What did you tell him?" I asked softly. "That I was ashamed," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "Not of you, Mum, of me, of how I let Thomas and Margaret convince me that their world was the only one that mattered, that connections and money were more important than the person who taught me to ride a bike and held my hand through every disappointment." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Amanda, I've never wanted to compete with Thomas and Margaret. I know they gave you opportunities I couldn't, but I didn't deserve to be pushed aside like I meant nothing. I know that now," she said, squeezing my hand. "Jackson helped me see it, and Caroline. She told me that wealth can't buy the kind of love that stays up all night with a sick child or celebrates every small victory. She's a wise woman. Margaret and Thomas are furious with her," Amanda added with a faint smile. "They think she's interfering, but Jackson stands by his mother. He says no one should treat family the way I treated you." We talked for hours in that diner, peeling back layers of hurt and misunderstanding. Amanda explained how she had been seduced by the glamour and possibilities of Thomas's world, how Margaret had subtly encouraged her to distance herself from her modest upbringing, how she had convinced herself that her behavior was justified because she was moving up in the world. "I think I was afraid," she confessed as we prepared to leave. "Afraid that if I acknowledged where I came from, who I really am, I wouldn't belong in Jackson's world, in the life Thomas and Margaret created for me." "And now," I asked, "now I realize that pretending to be someone I'm not is exhausting, and that I miss my mum." Her eyes met mine, vulnerable and sincere. "I know I hurt you terribly. I know saying sorry isn't enough. But I am sorry, Mum, so deeply sorry, and I want to try to make it right if you'll let me." I didn't promise immediate forgiveness or a return to the way things were. The wound was still too raw, the trust too badly damaged. But I did agree to take small steps toward rebuilding our relationship. Weekly lunches, phone calls, a gradual reintroduction into each other's lives. It won't be easy, I warned her as we parted. There's a lot of hurt to work through. I know, she said, hugging me for the first time in months. But you're worth it, Mum. You always were. The journey back to each other was neither quick nor smooth. There were difficult conversations about boundaries and respect. There were setbacks when Amanda fell into old patterns or when Margaret attempted to interfere. Thomas remained distant and disapproving, unwilling to acknowledge his role in driving us apart. But there were also moments of genuine connection and growth. Amanda began visiting my classroom after school, helping students with college application essays. She joined me for Sunday dinners at Rachel's house, reacquainting herself with the people who had been part of her childhood. She even framed a photo of us from her high school graduation and placed it prominently in her new home, despite Margaret's obvious disapproval. 6 months after our reconciliation began, Amanda invited me to dinner at her house. Just the three of us, Amanda, Jackson, and me. It was the first time I had been welcomed into their home. I have something to show you, Amanda said after dinner, leading me to a small room off the main hallway. She opened the door to reveal a cozy study with bookshelves lining the walls. On the desk sat the photo album I had given her at the bridal shower, open to a page showing 8-year-old Amanda and me at the beach, our faces sunburned and happy. "This is my favourite room in the house," she said quietly. "When things get overwhelming or I feel lost in Thomas and Margaret's world, I come here to remember who I really am, who we were together." That night, driving home from my daughter's house, I realised that while the pain of the wedding day would never completely fade, it had led to something unexpected, a more honest, more equal relationship between us. One based not on obligation or guilt, but on mutual respect and genuine appreciation. Amanda had discovered that wealth and status couldn't replace authentic connection. I had learned that loving my daughter didn't mean accepting mistreatment. And together we had begun to build something new from the broken pieces of our past relationship. It wasn't perfect. There would always be complicated dynamics with Margaret and Thomas, always moments when our different worlds collided uncomfortably, but we were finding our way back to each other, one conversation, one shared memory, one honest exchange at a time. And in that journey, both of us were discovering that true family isn't defined by seating charts or social status, but by the willingness to see each other, fully flaws and all, and choose love anyway. I hope my story resonates with some of you who may have experienced similar painful family dynamics. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself even when it meant risking an important relationship, or found yourself rebuilding trust with someone after a deep hurt? Please share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story touched you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories of healing and reconciliation. Remember, sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are with those we love the most, but they're often the ones most worth fighting for. Thank you for listening.